So many of you know son Michael, maybe all of us, and know that he's a very successful business person and that he founded an organization called Kids Without Borders. Some of you may even have traveled with him to Vietnam. But relevant to our discussion this morning, he is a refugee and he came to the US in 1975. And what he's going to be talking to us about this morning is what it's like to be a refugee, not just when you first arrive, but over time, and how we might help people because he's been helping other refugees for decades. So, son Michael, please go.
Okay, I'm going to try to share screen.
Okay.
Let me know if it starts working. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, great. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for taking a Saturday and listening to me. And I'll try to, I've been doing these kind of talk, several times at different organizations and Rotary, but today I'll make it a little bit different. I make it more informative on the issues of refugees. So that is a topic of today's talk is on refugees. So to start out, a little bit about me, and I don't want to spend a lot of time like in the past talk that a little bit elaborating on my story, but I came here a week ago on April 29th would mark the 47 years when I left Vietnam. It was on the last day when you see the scene of the helicopter lifted off the U.S. Embassy. Well, I didn't get on those helicopters because we have a family. I'm the oldest one of five, and my parents, and we didn't want to get separated. And those ways to get out very easily get separated because of the chaos, and so we hung on together, and we went through several avenues to get out, fail until almost the end of the day, and we were lucky enough that we boarded the ship that next to the last ship that left Saigon, and we survived the ocean with very little food and water, and we made it to the American naval base in the Philippines, and then on to America. So that's my journey to America. Just like that song by Neil Diamond, they coming to America by boat, by plane, by sea, and all of that. So we part of that song. And then my family was resettled in Chicago. And we pretty much, we're going through what the refugees today are going through, except, back then, there was not a lot of safety net for the refugees back then. The Vietnam War just ended, and people just, getting sick and tired of the word Vietnam on television for so many years. 58,000 soldiers, American die, kill, and then unbelievable number come back home. And not only that, but come back home and not in one piece sometimes. And but not only that, but people at home weren't really welcoming these soldiers back home. So here we come, refugees into some communities, and some people weren't too happy we were here. And that probably to some degree, some of the current sentiment that's happening right after the end of the war in Afghanistan, and then now you have refugees from from Ukraine and all that. As Stella also mentioned that more than 20 years ago, I started a charity organization, Kids Without Borders. It's an all volunteer, so we don't have any salary staff. It's all by volunteers, and 70% our work here in the community, and the rest in other part of the world, including Vietnam. But the 70% here locally, we do a lot of work supporting refugees and immigrants, and people with low income and so on. But so I do have a very strong connection with the refugees on the street level, and I think that's so important also that these people when you come here, you're new, and you try not to open up because you don't know, the trust level is not there. You don't know who are these people. You don't know what you could tell them. until you find out. I remember, as soon as I tell another refugees a little bit my story, say, hey, I'm just like you, they open up to me. They know that I totally understand what they go through, what we normally call our first days. And so today I hope that I can build some of that understanding, the correct understanding, because there's a lot of misunderstanding, on these new incoming people that eventually going to become Americans, going to become American citizens. So, so that's my credential on being knowledgeable about refugees. So to start off with, you know, um, well, what make somebody, one day, have a place to live, have a life, have connections, have family, and the next day you become, a refugee. Well, there's an international organization, the United Nations High Commission of Refugees, formed, and this was formed back right after about 70 some years ago, right in 1950, right after the end of the World War II, and it was formed to help millions of the Europeans uh, who fled, lost their homes in Europe, to resettle, and it was meant to be around for only 3 years after it was formed, and then now it's still around, and there's a reason for it, because there's always war. War never stopped in different places around the world, and that means there's always refugees. And this gives you a little snapshot of the refugees, especially the one that settled in America, and then I'll elaborate a little bit more on some of the key points in here. But you know, the reason this subject is up right now, because the major war. We just went through Afghanistan and then now Ukraine, but little people didn't know. But there's refugees more than just from Ukraine and from Afghanistan. Um, There are refugee camps with refugees in Ethiopia, in Uganda, in Myanmar, in
Myanmar,
in Bangladesh,
Bangladesh, yeah.
and Thailand along the border, because of what happened in Burma, Yemen, Congo, Mozambique, Syria. Of course, Syria is still going on there, and South Sudan. So this is the total refugees admitted to the U.S. These are solid numbers that happened since 2016, and you can see the declining of the number of refugees coming in, and some of that too. There's reasons tied up to that. But last year, 2021, Afghanistan, the war in Afghanistan ended around August, and for the and so the refugees were being processed after the war ended, and some of the numbers not part of these numbers. But the next one would tell you that from October 2021 until this March, there's only 408 refugees arrived in America. I'm sorry, in Washington State. And these are the breakdown. Of course, Ukraine, what happened is Ukraine were allowed to leapfrogging many of the other group of refugees because of the urgency of finding a place for these people to live. Syria is second, Sudan third, and then smaller number from Congo, El Salvador, Russia, Somalia, and some other countries. So 408 came in October, November, December. So within the last 6 months, who knows, how many would start coming for the rest of this year. I assume that it's going to be higher because the processing is going to be much faster and easier for people to get in because of some new regulations that the government putting in right now. Like, for example, in 1975, instead of going through the normal channel, the Vietnamese and the Cambodians, because the Vietnamese were considered stateless, not the Cambodian. And so the President Ford back then, he signed into act the Indochina Refugee Act that allow a lot of fast track to allow the refugees that admitted to America. Typically, the refugees would go, if I'll go through that next a little bit later on how you process. Okay, so first of all, the refugees being first of all, you have to apply with the United Nations High Refugee Commission, and then you get referred to different countries. So the refugee that got referred to the U.S., then they would be vetted and processed by the U.S. Refugee Admission Program, which is managed by the three departments: Department of Homeland Security, Human Health and Human Services, and Department of State. So, you know, uh, uh, if they get accepted, that means if we agree to take on that particular person or that particular family, then they would be qualified for the reception and placement program, the RNP. And there's a lot of benefits. There's a lot of safety net within that program that allow the refugees to go through certain steps and also get help within their first days here in America. Um, there's assigned approved nonprofit resettlement agencies, and incidentally, that my first job in America when I came in 1975 was working for one of those agencies. I worked for Catholic Charities of Chicago as a refugee resettlement coordinator, and I helped, processing the incoming refugees from Vietnam and from Cambodia. And that was my first job. And 47 years later, I would tell you that probably my most satisfying and best job I ever had, from just being able to make huge differences of being the first contact of these people on their first steps on our soil here in America. So the refugees get accepted by the program and they're eligible for RNP, and then they transfer over to the sponsoring agency. So normally these nonprofit agency, they would look at the bio, they would look at the background of these applications, and they hand select them. So they pick through. So that's important because the refugees are just, you don't go in a camp with 50,000 people and you just take first come first serve. It doesn't work that way. So a lot of time, and it's a very sad situation too, a lot of time they look at how wholesome that family is. That means, if somebody say, well, I'm here with my 3 kids, but my wife's still stuck or still missing, or we get separated, most likely they would not take you. You would not be selected because they prefer to leave you there and wait until you know what happened to that missing person in your family. And for the refugees, that's probably what they like to do. Uh, uh, about four-fifths of all the refugees around the world right now, they live along, that means in refugee camps or in community along the border of their own country. If you ask the Ukrainians right now, I guarantee you that the majority of them do not want to go to America or whatever. That is just too far away. That's just too far away. There's always hope. When I left, you know what? It was tough, and we didn't want to go. We never wanted to be in America. I don't care how better life here was. We were happy with what we got. We love our country. We didn't want to live in a communist, and we willing to fight until the end, just like the Ukrainians doing now. But for the unarmed civilians, not the combatants, they left because it's not by choice, and they don't want to go far because they have family members, they have connections, they have, when you walk out of your house and lock the door, you never know if you could come back again. So why would you go far? Tomorrow not guaranteed for you. You have no idea what your destination is. So, but anyway, get back to the point. So a lot of these refugees are hand selected. So let's say if you are a medical doctor, hey, you look really good to these nonprofit resettlement organization, because they know that they can get you in and get you really on your feet and get you go to work and get you assimilate to life over here. Let's say if you know the language, wow, that move you up the list. So there's a lot of criterias that that it's just like it's not like the lottery, that is not by luck. Um, so I think that's important to know. And one thing is, like I just had a lunch meeting with somebody, and they're very concerned. They say, well, can they work? Are they allowed to work in America? And yes, they do. Refugees receive employment authorization. You get the one of the ID form that is say employment authorized right away, so you can allow to work in the U.S. as soon as you enter. So the first 90 days that you were here, the resettlement agencies would receive a one-time payment that helped to support the refugee per person, help to support the refugee for the first 90 days. That payment would do anything from covering housing, housing, food, essential things that you need every day, everything from a toothbrush, toothpaste, to clothes, to a bed, to a stove, to a microwave, or whatever. And they use that money during the 90 days. Now, let's say if they happen to go in an area like very expensive area and there's no housing available, and then these agencies have to come up, they have to fundraise to cover the cost, because these people have to be taken care of for the first 90 days. And then at the end of the 90 days, bye-bye. And I've seen it. I'm not going to name any organization. I've seen it. A lot of people just say, okay, well, guess what? I'm sorry, I have to move on to the next case. I cannot help you anymore. Effective, May 10th or whatever your 90 days come up. So what happened? Well, nothing bad happened yet, because the reason a lot of people want to come to America, when you become refugee and you have no hope of returning to your country or something turn around, and you have to, if you have a choice to pick other countries to come, we have the best safety net for incoming refugees than anywhere by anyone around the world. So after 90 days, these are the programs on your screen right now that either available through the state, and if the state does not offer these safety net program, then the government program would kick in. So the refugees, can sign up for the refugee cash assistance program, so they can pay their expenses. They can start paying their housing, and they can pay, other things. Medical is all well taken care of. There's a refugee medical assistance program available. And the government just extended, not too long ago, extended these programs from 8 months to 12 months. So it's good for the first years. And think about let's say you move from your home. I mean us, we're moving from one house to another house in a different state. Your first 6 months, your first years, you are so busy. You're so busy resettle. You're so busy with making new friends, finding new neighbors, learning your way around, that you never have time to think about, to want things. You just survive every day. Every day is something brand new to you. And the same thing with these people. So there's a lot of things that we think is essential to new incoming refugees that might not essential to them. And the bad part about it is sometimes our will to help somebody else kind of, not really helping them, because let's say we bring to their home and say, I have these things for you. I want you to have these things. And then 3 months later, you come back, you see they're still in the closet, because those are not the things that they need immediately right away. So that's one of the things that I've seen sometime, that we should sit here and we make the assumption, okay, you got to have this. This is what you need. Instead of get them involved and ask them, why don't you get me a list? Can you just give me the list of whatever that help you with your quality of life? Maybe something that help you to assimilate to the new place, the new home, the new language, everything else new. I think that kind of conversation is very important if you want to help a refugee family. Okay, so what the next thing is I want to tell you is what did these people go through in life? I mean, within the last short whatever period before they get here, what are the things that they're going through? So there's three phases that typically, people fleeing for safety and things like that going through. Um, uh, uh, the first phase is a pre-flight. That means before they actually pack up, before they walk out of their house and lock the door, before they escape in the dark, in the middle of dark of the night, before they disappear without having a chance to tell their neighbor and their best friends, because in fear that they're gonna hurt them or interrupt their plan for escape. These are the pre-flight things, things like uh, the loss of home and possessions. Well, when you're walking out that place, you need to think that, hey, you know what, I probably won't be able to see this place again. I remember when the ship I was on left the port of Saigon, and the sun was setting. It was slowly getting dark, and in the midst of, there was gunfire all over the place. It's jet screaming, helicopter roaring above us, and there's chaos. And the ship was so crowded, and we just squeezed in. And for one moment, I remember one thing that I did that I would never forget in my life. I took a moment, and I just kind of I we all crouched down, so because there was gunshots, from the shore. We all crouched down, and then I remember I on purpose I turned around, I fully turned around my back, and I took a really long, deep look at the skyline of Saigon. And the reason I told myself, this might be my last time I would look at the place where I was born and grew up. And it was a sad scene. The sun was setting, so little light still left, and there's smoke columns coming up, and you can see gunfire tracers, going across the sky. But I look at the skyline, I saw the steeple of the main church downtown. I saw the antenna tower and things like that, and I really took a photo of that into to my heart. And the pre-flight is it's tough. And you know what, we never had a chance to say goodbye to our relatives and things like that, because to some of them, they we could get them in trouble for knowing and not doing something, or they might wanted to come with us, and we didn't know. We didn't know. First of all, we didn't know if we where we're going to end up, and we didn't know if we are going to make it. We just took a chance. We just take a risk. So let's say, okay, so we got through, we made it, and the next stage would be, I mean, you were able to escape. So the next stage would be the point where you become very vulnerable, because let's say if these refugees, they get to the border of Ukraine and Poland, and they get across the border, and they become vulnerable because now they're in somebody's land, somebody's place, somebody's home, and somebody's going to tell them something, and they probably have to make a decision. Should I trust that person? Should I take a chance? Should I, go with it? Somebody say, hey, hand me the baby, I can save your baby. Well, what you gonna do? A lot of those things happen during the flight stage. Or you end up in, I don't know if you have a chance to see some documentary of the refugee camps. I live in several refugee camps before we are allowed to resettle in Chicago. One of the big refugee camp back then was in Guam. It's called Tent City. The sun during the day was 100 and some degree, and we live in tent and sleep on a cot on the dirt, and the food line every day. You just get up. Literally, I'm not making it up. You get up for breakfast, and you get on a breakfast line, and you carry your breakfast to the back of the line for lunch and eating while you get in line, because it's just so crowded, so long. You live like um, a mindless day and night in these camp. And then if you have a chance to see these documentary of like refugee camp in Bangladesh for the people from Myanmar, or the Gulu in Uganda, on Saman, it's just unbelievable, the condition of the camp there. And you know what? Guess who's helping those people? The United Nations. That's it. Or all this money that we just spend on helping Ukraine. None of that would go to any of these camps that have been existed for so many years and been there, and we don't know how long it's going to be around. There's people that go into camp, grew up, got married, have their own children in there, and they still live at the camp. And their tomorrow means tomorrow behind that barbed wire. That's it. So now you made it. You came to America. So that's the post flight. My father was military, one of the high ranking general in the military, and he got a job working at a Northwestern Railway in Chicago, working outdoor, doing something they never did before in his life, learned everything on the job. And the cold weather kind of, because we never used to the cold weather in Chicago outdoor with the winter and the wind, kind of ruined his knees and his ruined his body. And you know what? But we were happy. We glad that we have the freedom. We're glad that we're in America and we could do things that we wouldn't be able to do under communists. And we're glad that we were able to giving an opportunity to build our life over again. But the hard part, some of the hard part, beside the language barrier, you start out with a low social and economic status. Some of these people never been in the other end, the other side of the line, the table, where you, instead of giving, you're receiving. And we've seen a lot of that when COVID first started. I volunteered at a food bank, and I saw so many people came to the food bank and had no idea what to do, and they were very, very uncomfortable because they never have to be in the position like that before. Well, these refugees they have to live through that. They have to get over that. Lost of identity and roles. Of course, you start out being a nobody, being a refugee, underemployed. As that was one of the examples I give. Housing. A lot of time, for me, I remember as a coordinator for Catholic Charities, and housing was very hard. So the Catholic Charities, one part of after the summer, they couldn't find a place to put these incoming refugees as like an orientation center before they go out to housing. So what they did was they used an unused convent of a church, and the church is in one of the worst neighborhood in Chicago. They call Holy Trinity Church, and near a sixth corner. And I remember there's 4 doors to that convent, and one door would go to a Puerto Rican neighborhood, one door would go to a Black neighborhood, one door would go into the German neighborhood, one door would go to the Polish neighborhood. And guess what? Inside the building, a whole bunch of Vietnamese, and Cambodians. And it's so dangerous that the police, the Chicago police patrol car, they all have like 2 cops in each car, and they escort taxis, dropping people off by the church there. And guess what? These people, they just escape war, they just escape bullets and all of that. And then we throw them into those things because those are the places affordable, and they might have to endure and survive. But one thing, they are so resilient. They go through a lot, and we should never underestimate these people. One example, we have a clothing bank in Tukwila, and the Rotary Club down there help out a lot. That clothing bank, and sometimes they have days that they open, and they invite the refugees and immigrants to come and pick out clothes for the children. And some of the volunteers will always worry about, oh, that is too far. How would they do this? How would they get here? They forgot it. And I keep reminding them, say, in Ethiopia, a woman would walk 3-4 hours to carry a bucket of water home. these, let these people tell you what they need instead of telling them what we need to do for them, you know. So anyway, here's some ways that we can help these folks. One of the group that I know, because I was part of the small team beginning with this group, is they call Viets for Afghans. And right after the Afghanistan war ended, and the unbelievable thing that we saw on TV that kind of reminded people like us, Vietnamese Americans, what happened to us. And then so we want to pay it forward. And so there's a group of younger Vietnamese Americans, and some of them were born over here. Some of them never went through the end of the Vietnam War, but they knew what their parents and the older folks like me went through. And so they formed together a group called Viets for Afghans, and they use their own experience from their family to help these people. And I think, that is so effective. And that kind of cover a lot of things that I mentioned earlier about asking them instead of, do it for them or make them doing it. But then there's many other organizations too. I recommend that the organization that have people from from their community, from their group, because they understand better. But not only that, but the refugee would trust the help from there a lot more. Some other ways to help. I had a lunch meeting with this organization, the ELD, and they have just remarkable training program that I encourage them to put together a program, that training program for refugees. Right now, they're doing it, like, for example, for the Latino community. They train people to be entrepreneurial. And as I mentioned earlier, these refugees come here with skills, with vocations, and with education and all of that. They're very skillful. And this is probably the one of the very effective way to help them get back on their feet, but also sustaining, instead of just let them clock in, clock out, making, whatever minimum wage to start with and work their ladder up the ladder. There's so many opportunities out there to open a small business. You can get an ice cream truck, you can get a food truck, you can help them. So this organization, ELD, they putting together these training courses, and they also have a micro loan. After people graduate from these courses, they can apply for the micro loan to help them start a small business. So if my thinking is, maybe I talk to some Rotary clubs, and we can recruit the Rotary clubs to sponsor some workshops by these type of organizations. We can be involved to help the refugees, and maybe we can give some seed microloan money to help out, for example. So I think this is and if any of you or any of other Rotary Club want to hear more about what I'm talking about today, just let me know. I'll be more than happy to do that. Some other ways to help, summer camp coming up, for example. The best I remember when I first came, my first 4th of July, and I was a group of church people took me to a 4th of July picnic outside of Chicago at the Forest Preserve. And it was just an eye opening for me, but it's just a great way for me to assimilate and feel like I belong, feel I'm part of them. I was welcome into their house. On the weekend, I organized, my job is to organize a reception, a welcome refugee reception by different churches. And what we do is, let's say a church in Skokie, on this Sunday, they announced to all the parishioners that we're going to host some visitors from Vietnam at the 10 o'clock mass. And what happened is like 10, 12 church members would bring their cars to the refugee center. They pick all of us up, they bring us to the church, they rope off a special section that we all sit in. We all came, I'm Catholic, but there's a lot of people are Buddhists. The majority of people are Buddhists, but it has nothing to do with religion. It's about breaking bread and sharing and meeting and understanding. So we sit there and, we follow the mass through. We were asked to sing one of the song during the mass, and would stand up, and it just opened our eyes, and it just made us, feel so welcome. Um, your Rotary Club, you have event, uh, invite them, let them let them see what we do behind the scenes. Let them learn about. There's no better way to learn about America than coming into somebody's home, and our club meeting is our home. And so that, as I mentioned, summer camps, maybe scholarship for summer camps. Another thing is, we've been, Jeff and I have been talking to our scholarship committee, because we're interested in maybe reserve one or two scholarship that we normally give our year for refugees. And people say, well, let's not well, why do we do that? And this is my answer. These kids, they come here, they have no resume. So when they apply for these scholarship, for example, they can say, oh, I volunteer and I did this, and I picking up trash and I help my neighbor and all of that. They have nothing. They just they just got off a boat, or a plane or whatever. And so maybe give them an opportunity instead of going back to the line and waiting for their chance, maybe because whatever we do, it pay back. What you did, what all of us did for the Vietnamese Americans, pay back, because we pay back. We return, we pay it forward. We came here, we became good citizen, we contributing to the country, contributed to everything here. And then we help the next person come in. We become big brothers and big sisters to the next refugee coming in. So it's not a wasted effort. It's a wonderful opportunity for us to help these new and soon to be Americans. I hope I didn't overstay my time, and so I think I'm gonna close the share, and then if anyone have anything to contribute, I love to hear. Thank you.
Do we have any questions?
We
Roberta?
have Jeff and Kathy and Roberta, as I see hands up.
Okay.
Jeff first and Kathy, then Roberta is the hands I saw.
Okay.
Son,
Okay, so
thank
now I'm in line. Is that the?
That's it. I'm sorry. Yes.
This is a quick question. First of all, thank you, son Michael. Wonderful as always. Rotarians are active, but we're a subset of society in general. What suggestions do you have for all of us who have people in our world, in our orbit, maybe even in our family, who discount the concerns, the worries, etc., of people who are refugees and therefore don't take steps to be of assistance? What can I say to them to bring them under the Rotary-like tent?
Okay, I totally understand your question. Okay, so first, let's say if I'm speaking on behalf of a refugee. Okay, so well, first of all, everybody that needs help deserve to get help. Okay, no matter what their background, no matter what time of the day, no matter whatever reason and things like that. And that's what's great about our country. But if I speak just on behalf of refugees, one of the problems is we all lump refugees and immigrants all together.
Mm-hmm.
We do. And these are victims of different circumstances, totally different victim of circumstances. So first of all, by truly understand, the core, the roots of refugees and the roots of immigrants, and not lump everyone together, that would help. Okay, so being properly educated about the issues, and if you look at the three phases of the pre-flight, flight, and post-flight, that probably explain a lot more of why they shouldn't be treated the same. But some, so you were saying Rotary, and what I would do, I would not worry about quantity, and I look more on quality. This, and I said this in the last time I talked, my starfish story. If I could help one person, if it could change the mind of one person, that ripple effect, I guarantee you, let's not, I wouldn't want to sit in front of 2,000 people and preach to them and hope that they all walk out there and think the same way I do.
Right.
I'd rather have a
One person.
conversation, you and me, over a cup of coffee or maybe a beer, even though it's too early, and having that conversation, and you walk away, you feel strongly about that, and you're gonna be that ripple. And so that's my thing. Gee, if you invite, we had an opportunity not too long ago, Jeff. We had one of our club's speaker was about Afghanistan, and it just happened that one of our member brought a guest who came from Afghanistan to that same meeting. Okay, and we all walk away, from the talk from the speaker and from the comments from our guests. Many people, I bet you, many people in that room, and you tell me I'm wrong, walk away felt totally different. Even our club president said, I learned so much today. I saw
It's a good
things a little bit
It's a good
different.
example.
So that's my answer. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, son.
Okay, Stan, who was next?
Kathy, then Roberta, then you.
Okay, Kathy?
Thank you. Son Michael, I love hearing your story, and every time I hear it, I learn something else. So thank you again for joining us today. I was intrigued with that entrepreneurial training program you were outlining. That's the whole idea of, not giving a fish, but teaching someone to fish, and tapping into existing skills or helping to skill build for sustainability and livelihood and all that. Is there, are there any Rotary clubs that are currently funding tuition, or is there a special component? I didn't get the website fast enough to go do the research, or to bring it up and look. But where can Rotarians engage, and are there any Rotary clubs that are funding tuition or some of those programs where we could put maybe a couple of clubs together, apply for a matching grant? I'm just wondering where the starting point, what the starting point might look like here for Rotary involvement.
Yeah, thank you for asking that, Kathy, because this is only the very beginning. I met with them and I convinced them that do something specifically for the refugee, because right now they're doing for the immigrant, for the Latino community, and it's so easy to replicate that. So one of the concerns was language barrier, for example. So let's say right now, if we can identify it, and these courses are online, and they are like one Wednesday per week for several, that, and it's so powerful and impacting. And then after that, they can get the apply for the micro loan, So if there's no language barrier, the next course would be in mid-September. And so some of the Rotary clubs, we have time. And now, right now, they have a fee of $400 per course per individual. And so I was saying, well, let's say if we come up with scholarship, can you guys match? So instead of we pay $400, we pay $200, and you match $200. And it is so doable. And what I plan to do is I plan to kind of put a summary available, and then maybe talk to our club and see if we mind to be a lead club on doing something like this, and get our Rotary logo. And this is such a sustainable program, because what we talked about earlier, all that government program is a short term. We talk about long term. We talk about, we bring these people from being a refugee to the next level, where they just say, hey, I don't need that, or that cash program. I don't need that medical program, because my family, and that's exactly what my family did. We never had, we were offered food stamp, and I tell you, 47 years later, I don't even know what it looked like. And a lot of that has to do with pride. We came here and we felt so funny somebody give us a old used shirt and to wear that shirt. And so at the beginning, we have no choice. Otherwise, we have no shirt. But then we were waiting for the day where we could buy our own shirt. So the power is ours. We can do it. And if I have more opportunities to share with people, within Rotary, that we can do this, and maybe we can replicate in many other places. Because think about 5 million refugees from Ukraine, and you look at the number I just showed you, only 233 came to our area. Holy cow. This program, they can do the same. They can do the same for the refugees in Germany. They can do the same for these refugees in Poland and things like that. We got to help them get back on their feet. Thank you for the question.
Roberta?
Yeah, so I really, all my many years at Lutheran Community Services, what I learned the most about refugee resettlement was from the staff, because they were former refugees, as you said, some when you were first hired with the Catholic agency. And I just have a little bit of updated information, which some might have, but I attended a webinar just this last week about the Ukrainian situation. It was through Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services. And there is a significant Ukrainian community in the Portland, Vancouver, and also the Seattle area. But the refugees that you saw on that list were the ones that had already been vetted prior to the war. So now, and Biden has said we can let in 100,000 refugees, but they're not coming through the agencies. It's all a private program. And the only way a Ukrainian can come to the United States right now is if somebody personally sponsors them. Could be which means you have to accept financial responsibility. So it could be a person or it could be a church. The other thing you saw in there was you didn't see the number of Afghans that have been resettled. Huge number of Afghans that have been resettled since last summer in this area. But again, they're not called officially refugees. They're called they're parolees, humanitarian parolees. But the agencies are doing, you have to remember that Trump basically he reduced the numbers of refugees that could come into the country. So these 9 national networks, they just they had to lay off staff, and now they've had to hire again as fast as they can to primarily accommodate the Afghans. But they're not involved with the Ukrainians now, unless they were previously vetted as refugees. Now, the national organizations are trying to get that changed. They're trying to get the Ukrainians to have that same status as the Afghans, so they would become what they're calling humanitarian parolees, and all this terminology. I can't keep up with it either. So anyway, I that's new information to me. I just thought I would share it. Sam maybe already knows all this. What I wanted to ask Sam is, have you ever been back to Vietnam?
Oh, many times.
Yeah, I came back. I finally made it back to Vietnam in 1999, and and we all found closure. No hatred and no animosity, and then eventually I returned on a regular basis, and Kids Without Borders, did a lot of work in Vietnam, and I think my work and Kids Without Borders work in Vietnam contributed a lot to Rotary. Came back to Vietnam a year ago. Rotary reopened back in Vietnam in June 2021. After ended in the war, and so part of my my Rotary mission to Vietnam, we also brought back a lot of American veterans, and they came back and find closure, including many member of my from my club. Ed Sider, one of the past president of my club, he was in Vietnam, got injured, and then got flown out on a helicopter and never had a chance to turn around and look at the country behind him, And I was able to bring people like Ed back to Vietnam and walk on the same place where he got injured, and and then change his life because he got involved in helping orphans, and also we work on Agent Orange issues over there too. So we got to, first of all, Lutheran service is doing a fantastic job. I think Lutherans and the Lutheran group and also the Jewish Family Services group in our area doing one of the great job of helping the refugees. Yeah, I missed you mentioned the last online call from Lutheran. I missed that one. I had the one, I think the week before, the week before where they have the actual refugees speaking. I was on that call. But yeah, I know what you talk about, the parolee, if you have a family here that sponsor, the family, and they would sign paperwork and say that they will be responsible. Yeah, they don't allow anyone to come in here unless you go through an agency or sponsors, because you have to have some kind of
Betty.
yeah, something to fall back to, so thank you, Kathy.
Yeah, one thing I noticed some over the years was that because when I started working back in a long time ago, we had a lot of Vietnamese and Cambodian staff, and we were still resettling, and the churches were very involved at that time. And then that sort of faded away, and which made it harder for the agencies to have, because we really relied on churches and their sponsorships. They've sort of come back now with helping Afghans, and we'll see about Ukrainians. But yeah, it was, and it was hard because they weren't as eager to take somebody, for example, from the Congo. So I think there's different forms of racism involved in all this as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you. I asked about, when I visited Vietnam, we also heard about the former vets coming back and how this was kind of a healing experience for them. And I thought, wow, that makes sense, because the country is really a young, vibrant place, and I suppose if your only memory is of it being war torn.
It's different now.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And one last question. We talk a lot about contributing money to things, but is there also a place for Rotarians to act as mentors, especially to people who already are coming as refugees but have business skills and personal interactions?
Yeah, for the Rotarian that's still working, you can look out for employment for those folks. I think, if you identify the family, the next thing to do is maybe somebody sit down and do an assessment of skills and ability, so you can match the person with the right thing. So the people that are working, you can actively helping these people to land a job that match his or her skill. Otherwise, they just take whatever job available first, just like all of us did. And then for the many Rotarians that are not working, but you have skills, then we can be the mentor. We can form some mentorship. If I own a business in printing before I retire, and somebody who came here that had some work for newspaper over there or something, hey, maybe there's a way I can help that person transfer his or her skills and make it transferable over here, so they don't end up underemployed.
So what's the best way to make a connection to do that?
Identify the family first, and then
Through one of these organizations that you have.
Yeah, or through like, for example, my wife teaches for Lake Washington School District. Guess what? All of a sudden, tomorrow you come in, there's a new kid in town. Dress a little bit differently, go to ELL because lack of English. So there's always opportunity to identify and seek them out, because a lot of times these people, they won't look for us. they wait to be asked or somebody to find them because they're not used to asking for help. Or they
So
don't know.
maybe in our club, we could kind of organize around that.
Yeah, we can talk.
Identifying an organization that we could meet people through or something like that.
Right, yeah, a lot of that, the school, unfortunately, one of the things I experience is these refugees, after the first 90 days, they tend to relocate to
Oh.
wherever there's a community.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of Hmong people in Minnesota because it was.
Yes, yeah, I lived there. Yes, I
Yeah,
know.
and the type of work that they have skills, so they either go to where the communities are or they go to where the jobs are. In the North and South Dakota, a lot of refugees go there because they got a job out in the oil field right away.
Hmm.
And they don't mind to work outside and things like that except the cold.
Yes. I think we're at the end of our time that we usually have, and I wish we could go on for another hour, but we can't. Thank you, Son, for being with us, but also thank you for everything you do, including helping us out by donating coats to another refugee camp, the tiny house village in the University District. So I hope our club finds ways to actively help, and others are on this call as well. And thank you so much. And we're going to, as we said, record this and send it out to a lot of people. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Son.
Have a good weekend.
Yes, thank you for a great presentation.
Thank you, Sam.
Bye-bye.